Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Echoes and Hamster Church. This is our once a month opportunity to hear from someone local, usually in the age of COVID, and our chance to meet online. We've had a few guests a little bit further afield, but we love to stay local. It's Hamster Church. It's all about billing hamsters. So thank you for coming tonight. If you are live or if you're watching this recorded later, welcome. Echoes is the church community that is hosting this. We do a lot of funky things like have church outside at Wild Church, Creative Church, where we get to explore the artist that is inside all of us, service church,
Mhm.
volunteer programs, um, pub church when we're not prevented from meeting together indoors or even outdoors. Um, and kind of traditional worship at times. So we do a lot of different things, trying to be a force for good in the larger community of Bellingham and not just the good of our own little community, which often happens with churches. I am really happy to be able to introduce Tina McKim tonight as our Hamster Church guest. Tina and I know each other a little bit just through kind of activist circles here in Bellingham.
Mhm.
And we're going to learn a little bit about Tina and about the uh, kind of the organization that she has ended up in a leadership role in, the Birchwood Food Desert Fighters. And so, without further ado, the first two questions that we like to ask for any Hamster Church uh, guest, the first one is, what's the most interesting thing that you have done or experienced in the recent past, kind of in our region? But during the coronavirus, we spend so much of our time online that it can probably be further
Mm.
afield than that too. So, yeah, what is something that's kind of caught your attention and been interesting in the recent past?
Um, I think my most interesting thing was a performance that I watched online with some friends, and had some friends in too. It was from a performance group that is in a disability justice troupe from the Bay Area in San Francisco. And they had performers from around the country perform in different studios for a really fascinating and beautiful performance of it. It was called We Love Like Barnacles, Crip Lives in Climate Change. And it was amazing. And it was so amazing to root for my friends as they performed. And then, you know, just be kind of in community with other disabled people uh, in this really beautiful art experience, but all together online, and the beauty and the possibility of that was really wonderful. And so I think that was my most
That's
interesting thing. Is
that's super cool. And
yeah,
what did it mean? We love like barnacles. Like, what was the overall gist of that?
the overall gist is that we don't have the access uh, to constant movement. We aren't always able to just up and uproot. So we adapt to what's
Oh,
around us, and hold close and come together, and uh, we we survive. We survive
yeah,
no matter what. Like in the weirdest, harshest, most bizarre conditions, we're there. We're always there. So
cool.
it was really cool, and
Yeah,
it's the kind of community and a beautiful art experience that kind of carries you from the whole year and then on to the others. So it was really amazing. So
it sounds it. It sounds it. That sounds really
yeah,
cool. This morning I was in a 3-hour study group,
yeah.
and it was located in the southeastern US. And I mean, when this thing was originally scheduled, the person who was leading it was, going to be traveling there, and
Mhm.
um, but now with COVID, it got opened up to the rest of the country. There were like 150 people in this thing, and it was really,
Oh,
yeah. So there
cool.
certainly have been some benefits to the pandemic, and
Yeah.
the fact that we've got not all, but so many more elder folks
Mhm.
who can actually get on a computer or a phone now and talk with a loved
Yeah.
one via video chat.
Mhm.
It's kind of been forced on some folks, and it is going to help. It's going to help us with communication into the future, I think.
Oh,
So,
yeah. Yeah.
but holy cow, can't wait to be in
Yeah.
person with folks. Tina and I were talking about the last time we saw our parents
Yeah.
before we got on, and it's been too long. So,
Yeah. It's
yeah.
amazing.
Okay, well, cool. Thank you for that.
Mhm.
Um, and the next question is, how are you here in Bellingham?
Okay.
Were you born here? Are you transplanted here? What's your Bellingham story?
Okay. I can tell that. First of all, I have to say hi, Charles. I see your message. For some reason, it won't let me respond, but it's nice to see you. Um, I was going to say, so Bellingham, we actually, let's see, I was born in Seattle and I moved kind of around Lake Washington. And then I was in Seattle for a long time. And then our little apartment building was a little triplex and they sold it. And because the rents were skyrocketing so much with the gentrification happening there, we realized that our rent, which was already at the border of what we could even afford to pay, was going to double. Like you can look up on the
Seriously?
sales price; it was going to double, and that would have been market rate. So so we looked around and we tried everywhere to find an accessible place to live, um, not just in terms of um, not just in terms of price, but in terms of our pets and also in terms of my physical accessibility needs. And sometimes I use a wheelchair and sometimes I use a walker. Most of the time I use crutches, but not every place is set up for that. I can't live on a, third floor walk up with no elevator.
No,
And
no, yeah.
yeah, so we looked around for so long and we couldn't find anything. And we thought, well, what would we want in a place that we could live, and like where in the state would have what we wanted and what was truly important to us. And we love the ocean and we love the mountains. We love to go kayaking and fishing, and we like to see music, and we like to be connected to the arts and all kinds of cultural events, and we love good food. We have to be able to eat good food, So we looked all around, and I had in college, I had a lot of friends who lived in Bellingham, so I would come up and I'd take the Greyhound up and visit them, and I remembered loving it up here. So we just kind of took a chance and found a place, and we ended up moving up here, and so we've been up here for 6 years now, 6.5,
Okay.
something like that. Yeah,
All
we
right.
love it. It's awesome. I mean, it's got problems. Every place has problems. Like that's the thing. Like every place has problems, but there are some really beautiful things about living in this place that
Yeah.
so
Wow, if it's just been 6 years, you jumped right in, when you
yeah,
arrived here, my goodness.
yeah.
Were you involved in any kind of activist stuff? I assume you were in the Seattle region?
I was kind of off and on. I did a lot of I did I kind of just jumped in without any specific group with WTO and all that, and I kind of was in and out of a bunch of different things, and some no Keystone Pipeline stuff before I left. But I did a lot less activism in the Seattle time because I was still working. It was before I was on disability, and at the time, working just took up all my energy, and I didn't, I'd come home and sleep and wake up
Yeah,
and go to work. And so being on disability really changed that and opened up a lot of new avenues to be part of the world and connect with what was important to me.
mhm,
So yeah, I joined in with stuff
yeah.
here. Yeah.
Maybe if we have time towards the end, maybe, if we have time to circle
Mhm.
back and talk about, um being disabled and
Yep.
being in the activist community and what kind of
Mhm.
experience that's been for you.
Sure. Well,
Uh,
I can go on about that one. So
I bet. Like, there's so many things that we could talk to you about.
sure,
Um,
sure.
we were highlighting the Birchwood Food Desert
Mhm.
Fighters, and
Yeah.
my guess is there's probably a number of folks who are listening tonight who, or in the future, who know a bit about that, and that's why
Mhm.
they're listening in. But in case there's not, can you just
Mhm.
kind of explain what the heck the food desert at Birchwood in the Birchwood
Totally.
neighborhood here in Bellingham is all about?
Yeah. So, Birchwood is a neighborhood in Bellingham that is one of the lowest income neighborhoods. It's also one of the most diverse neighborhoods in Birchwood. A lot of migrant workers, a lot of new immigrants, a lot of elders, a lot of disabled people. There's a lot of high density housing that just came in the last 10 years. So it's a big neighborhood with a big variety of people in it. And it had a grocery store, an Albertsons, that had been there for roughly 35 years. And in 2016, it closed kind of unexpectedly. And everyone kind of thought, well, another store is going to go in there. Like maybe there's another grocery outlet going in. That would be so perfect for the neighborhood in a lot of ways because there's a lot of low income folks there. But it didn't happen. And, there were a lot of kind of terrible things that happened with the closure of the Albertsons. Albertsons is owned, sorry, let me rephrase this. So there's been this weird corporate thing of grocery stores and other businesses being owned by other businesses and going back and forth with ownership and capital transfers. All of this level on a all of this action on a corporate level of ownership that has nothing to do with food access in the neighborhood. It just has to do with shifting money around so that the right players are making the right amount of money. So for a while, Hagen's owned Albertsons. For a while, Albertsons owned Hagen's, and then it went back and forth. But ultimately, right now, Albertsons owns Hagen's and they own Safeway. So when the Albertsons shut down, there was a lot of negotiations with Jobs with Justice to try and keep the jobs for the workers who were there and to shift those jobs into other local Hagen's and Safeways around the region. But it ended up that very few of them got employment. And most of the people who did get a job were hired on at reduced rates of pay. Sometimes, their pay being cut in half and, being sent to a store, say in Anacortes, someplace where they had to have a significant drive to work there. So the closure impacted the neighborhood in that way. It was a big loss of union jobs. And so that's a loss of health care for a lot of people. That's a lot of benefits, it's a loss of, decent wages. So it impacted the neighborhood in that way. And then it also impacted the neighborhood in a way that many people, including myself, had never heard of before, which is these non-compete clauses. So when the Albertsons closed, they tried to rent out, but they had stipulations in their leasing agreements that any business that went in there could not sell groceries. And you couldn't give away food. You couldn't have anything to do with food or pharmacy services. So that really prevented any sort of grocery access in the neighborhood. But the most obscene part about it is that it went for decades. And the final tally of how long that is ended up when they couldn't find anyone to lease the building, then they sold it. No grocery store can enter into that building until 2047. And then they also have these non-compete clauses that they call CC&Rs on the rest of the strip mall that the store was in. And that also prevents groceries from going into those smaller spaces. So the corporate interests of the grocery store have really prevented any food access to the neighborhood, because there isn't another space like that in Birchwood. There's no place that you can put a sizably sized grocery store right now that could meet a lot of the food need in the neighborhood. And it really struck the neighborhood really hard. A lot of people don't have cars, a lot of people with kids, a lot of single moms, and a lot of elders who moved into the neighborhood who were like, I'll move into this apartment complex right next to Albertsons, get rid of my car because I'll be able to walk and get my food all the time, easy peasy. And suddenly that was cut off. So it really hit the neighborhood hard. The only points of food access currently are like little things in the 7-Eleven. There's a small amount of stuff in the Big Lots, but like I said, they're prohibited even with the sale. Even with the sale of the building, they included that same non-compete language in the sales agreement that there can't be a grocery store there. So there's just those two places. There's a little tiny store, Netto's Market is in there, but it's tiny. It can't meet the needs of I think it's like 10,000 people who live in the neighborhood, and they're in a position right now where they can't even take EBT. And this is a neighborhood where more than half of the kids in the elementaries and the middle school are on free and assisted payment lunches. So it really struck the neighborhood hard.
Yeah, and it's remarkable to me. I mean, it literally is stunning
Mm-hmm.
that a corporation cares more for their potential future income
Mm-hmm.
than they do for people to have access to food. Like, it's just like, how
Yeah,
does that even happen? Like, there
yeah,
I just yeah.
yeah. It's really mind-boggling, and we're at that point with a lot of our basic resources right now, with food, with housing, with water is becoming
Mhm.
that way.
Yeah.
So it's something we really have to consider as a society. How are we going to make sure that we have access to our basic needs, you know, outside of corporate control? And because it can't all be profit driven, if we're going to survive. It's just too 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 mind-boggling. It's just how do they think that's possible? And they initially thought that, oh well, if we close this store, we'll be able to drive people to the new Safeway and to the Hagen's, which are both farther away and more expensive. And the Albertsons had been raising its prices just before it closed. So, people were already buying less and not able to purchase the things that they wanted to anyways. So they knew it was a failing strategy. So it made absolutely no sense for them to do that. And it turns out that we did some research that they aren't actually, it's not new. Sorry. I have a little trouble focusing right now. I
It's okay.
apologize.
No, I'm following
But,
you fine.
oh, are you? Okay, good,
Mhm.
good. It's a huge topic, and there's so much to talk about with
Mhm.
it that I I get excited and all the thoughts come to my head all at once, and I have to tell them line up. Um, but this is a thing that Albertsons and Safeway, depending on whichever one of them owned the other, um, they both own a series of other stores. Like throughout the nation, they have other groups, kind of like Kroger owns Fred Meyer and a million other groups.
Right.
But they've been closing down stores, and they've been doing this with the non-competes in place across the nation. And it's primarily in low-income neighborhoods, in neighborhoods with high percentages of people of color and people who are disabled, lots of elders. So it's a really terrifying trend. And it's something that we have to start facing as a community in a real way and in a policy way, because who would have thought that they would put something in that you couldn't have a grocery store until 2047? I mean, that's an entire generation
Nobody
without
would
groceries.
even consider. I mean, that's just why would anyone even think that would be possible?
Yeah,
Right?
right. And there are the fact that there are loopholes like this in our laws is really, terrifying. And so we worked really hard to get a non-compete clause banned in Bellingham. And we were successful partially. We were able to get a ban in place for any new non-compete clauses on grocery stores. So if say Safeway went into the Hobby Lobby space and opened up a store, they wouldn't be able to put a non-compete clause on after that. But unfortunately, any non-compete clause that exists currently is immune to the new law. And,
Okay.
that's most of the grocery store access in Bellingham,
Yeah,
because
there's not big new ones. Yeah.
No, Hagen's is the primary grocer for the entire city. I mean, what would happen if the Hagen's and Seahome suddenly closed down? They were like, we're done with groceries. We're only selling, clothes from now on,
Mhm.
and they still had a non-compete clause there that would cut off, the entire college,
Mhm.
and so we're really trying to be ahead of that curve and push for greater legislative power on that. And we're really urging our leaders to be courageous and to recognize how important the need is.
Yeah.
Our access to food is one of primary importance in
Yeah.
all of our lives. And
Yeah.
we've seen that even more in the pandemic, where, you know, grocery workers are essential workers. They're heroes. I'm married to a hero. And like we always joke about it. But you can get yanked around so quickly, and I hope that the pandemic amplifies that, the essential nature of food access to every person.
Yeah.
And so we're hoping to push for a statewide ban. That was supposed to be our focus last year, but with COVID, we just had to kind of switch to meeting immediate food needs because that just exploded.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, have you met some folks, you don't live in Birchwood, right?
I don't actually.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, it's weird. Yeah, I got involved with this. It has kind of a loose history. We started. Charles was the one who brought it up at a racial justice coalition meeting with a couple other folks, and a bunch of us kind of worked on that committee, and we heard about the non-compete clause, and we were totally outraged. And so we ended up having a few meetings, just our group, and then we had a big community meeting from which we formed a steering committee there, and I was on it. And I was initially just going to be there to make sure racial justice and disability justice were up there at the forefront. But there's been so much turnover just because people have had to move out of the neighborhood, jobs change and stuff. So, but I've met so many amazing people there, and like Birchwood has a real community spirit, especially with this pandemic. People who have the access to food and have extra access to resources have been bringing stuff, and we have 10 food share boxes around the neighborhood. They bring it there. They bring it to our weekly food share that we hold in the Industrial Credit Union parking lot. Like they're happy to have us there too, which is awesome. Like we talked with their manager, and they were totally fine with that. But yeah, I've met a lot of amazing people. We work a lot with Birchwood Manor, which is low-income disabled housing, and I've met a lot of great people there. There's a lady who comes to the share spot all the time who she's awesome. She's always especially excited about the funny-looking carrots and the weird-looking fruit, and we always laugh about that. But I haven't been able to be there in person this year, but I miss her a lot. And yeah, we just met so many neighbors who are like, what can I do? How can I help? And offering up their gardens and offering up space to, we just had two people who offered space to put a refrigerator, for community fridges. And, I've met Sharon at Faith Lutheran. She's the pastor there, and she's been really supportive. So yeah, just lots of great people in the neighborhood, and lots of artists who've been helping out with the artwork, and yeah, it's been really great. So
Cool.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about who the "we" is. So that would probably be identified, I'm assuming, as the Birchwood Food Desert Fighters.
Yes,
So
Birchwood
that's
Food
the
Desert
"we,"
Fighters.
and did that group kinda come out of the Racial Justice Coalition and Charles' instigation of at least bringing up this topic? Or was there some other group that named themselves that and you kinda came in? How did that entity
How did
come
that happen?
about?
Yeah. Well, that happened after the community meeting. We held a big community meeting at Shuckson Middle School where, we just talked to the community. We're like, what do you want? Because any solution to a problem needs to be done by the people who are affected. If you just come in and fix somebody's problem without talking to them, that you're not going to fix the problem. The idea, we work from a solidarity perspective, not a charity perspective. We were, those of us who don't live in Birchwood, who were involved in that racial justice thing, we were working in solidarity with the group that formed from that big community meeting. We decided to form a steering committee, and then I think it was during our first meeting, we decided on a name, and then we submitted that in our next big community meeting. What did people want to call themselves? And it was funny because it's such a wide, a diverse group of perspectives too, because people were like, Birchwood Food Desert Fighters, like, we're uncomfortable with the word fighters. And then, we put it out to the group, but we were like, how do you feel about that? And people were like, we're the fighters. We have to fight against the corporation. And so, it was really fascinating to learn and see. And so the steering committee was all people who lived in Birchwood, and then me, and just kind of over time,
all Birchwood folks and you.
and me, I was just kind of there, like I said, to make sure that we kept the disability and racial justice, at the center of it, and that we, and then Rosalinda was also there, Rosalinda Guillen.
Mm-hmm.
So, and we're at the point right now, like with the pandemic, things have changed so much. So many people have left that for whatever reason, mostly, childcare or, having to move out of the neighborhood because they didn't have friends or, get a new job somewhere in another part of the county. That we're always looking for more people from the neighborhood to step up, and especially people of color. We work hard to make sure that everything that is done is from the community and for the community.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not always perfect with that, but we that's our focus. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm having a little cog fog moment there. So
That's okay. Let me ask a specific question.
yeah, take me into the next question. I'll be there.
Yeah, let's go on to another question.
Okay.
So you mentioned the food boxes around, and you
Yeah.
do you meet in the Industrial Credit Union parking lot. Explain a
Mhm.
little bit about what those are. So
Yeah.
both the regular meeting in the parking lot, and then the food boxes and all that. What are those?
So we realized that one of we work in 3 different areas as far as food access in the neighborhood. We meet with immediate food access, so that people just have food in their hands. We work for building food capacity in the neighborhood by growing as much food in the neighborhood as we possibly can. And then we work on policy and activism to make sure that structural barriers to food access are broken, and are broken down and rebuilt in good ways, because they are broken in their nature. So for our immediate food access, we have 2 current projects that we're doing. We have built these little free food boxes. They're like the little free libraries.
Yeah.
And we have them around the neighborhood, in Birchwood and a little bit in Alderwood as well, where anybody can bring. Our motto with them is share what you have, take what you like. And so we have it written in there in multiple languages on 5 of them. We got 5 new boxes donated to us this year that we have yet to decorate. But anybody can take food, anybody can add food, and it's been happening a lot, which has been really great. Like, people other than us have been filling the boxes, and the food goes so fast, so fast. So if anyone out there listening would like to add to the food boxes, we can always use shelf stable proteins such as tofu that you see on the store shelf that doesn't have to be refrigerated. It's a lot of vegetarians in the neighborhood. We can always use canned fish, peanut butter, beef jerky, anything like that is just great. Fresh produce is amazing. So we've been doing that. And then our other immediate food access project is the Share Spot, which is a community food share that we've been doing for the last 5 years, 4 years, 4.5 years. We used to just do it in the summer, and it started with just produce that we grew and produce that people in the neighborhood had grown extra. So we did a lot of gleaning, and neighbors would also bring their extra produce to it. And again, it was take what you can, share what you like, because there's a lot of junk food available in the neighborhood, but there's not healthy food available. So we started with that, and then we made a partnership with the farm that supplies the the food bank, they offered to also give us food. So that farm has been also bringing us produce, as well as City Sprouts Farm, which is a women-owned farm in Birchwood, on one of the land trust sites. They're amazing, wonderful women, and they when they first started their farm, they're like, "Hi, Birchwood Food Desert Fighters, how can we help? You know, how can we be a part?" And that was so awesome to see them come into the community that way, with the idea of like, we want to be a part of the community. We're not just coming to the community to use their land, right? And so they've been really great with making sure that food is equitably priced and there's access to EBT and fresh bucks, things like that. So yeah, and some other farms again reached out to us. And then this year is the first year that we've operated in the winter, and we were able to do that because the Miracle Food Network reached out to us, and they are a gleaning organization that gets food from stores and like all sorts of other random places. Like the companies that make airline meals have extra airline meals. So just all sorts of random things that they get, and they will bring it in either a van or a giant horse trailer. They bring it to my backyard and we haul it there. Yeah, so we've upped the amount of food that we're handing out from, you know, a couple 100 pounds a week to like 1 to 2,000 pounds a week.
No way.
Oh, easily. And it's not enough. It's not enough. We also get food on Sundays now from Sustainable Connections. They do some gleaning at Whole Foods and a couple other places. And because the food bank can't take gleaned stuff right now, they bring it to us and we distribute that. But I'm telling you, this pandemic has hit the neighborhood so hard. So hard. There were a lot of service workers, a lot of people who did retail work that just isn't around anymore. And rents keep going up, you know.
They do.
They do, right? And there's some pretty shady rental practices in a lot of the buildings, unfortunately, in the area. And the jobs just aren't there, and the jobs aren't paying the wages that are needed to pay for those apartments. So food access is really short, especially at the end of the month when EBT runs out. EBT is food stamps for people who don't know. So at the end of the month, especially, the need for food is really great. And so we'll distribute it at the share spot, which we set up in the parking lot of the Industrial Credit Union. Or if there's not enough room because there's, for some strange reason, a bunch of people parked there on Saturday, we'll set it up. There's a little, almost like a little mini park right by the bus stop. And that's where we started setting up. We just put up some tables and a sign, and we're like, free food. And so, excuse me, I'm gonna take a quick sip of water.
Yeah, sure.
So it's just been busy. And then we'll post anything extra that we have online. I have, if you totaled the amount of people in the families, I have close to 100 people that regularly need food during the week who can't make it to the share spot. And so I get emails from a lot of people, you know, needing food. And sometimes we have it extra and sometimes we don't. But the need is there. It's so there. And no one stepped up otherwise to do it. You know, like it's really sad that during the last 4 years of the Trump era, the amount of food access to just everyday people was so limited. It was so very limited. And, you know, over a month into the new administration, and I'm glad that the EBT payments are going up finally, but as far as direct food access to people, because there's a lot of people who can't access EBT. There's a lot of
Yeah.
people who have language barriers, a lot of people who are prohibited from prior convictions. There's people who are prohibited just by their ability to fill out paperwork. Like the paperwork is hard. The paperwork is draining, and if you're dyslexic or have ADHD, or if you don't have literacy, if you aren't able to read, then filling out paperwork isn't going to happen. So, so having direct food access without any barriers, it's just there. You can take it if you want it. You don't have to take, a whole thing of beef if you're a vegetarian. You don't have to, take the cheese if you're lactose intolerant. Being able to take what you need in a dignified, no barrier way is really needed. It's really needed on a level even more than what we can provide. So I urge everybody, if you have the ability to access extra food, please take it to the share boxes in either Birchwood, or you'll see them in other neighborhoods too. You can bring it to the share spot between 11:45 and 1:30 in the parking lot of the Industrial Credit Union on Northwest.
On which day of the week?
On Saturdays. Saturdays, yeah. And then our other thing that we do is we have a couple of gardens that we are really growing a lot of food in. We've changed kind of how we're doing it this year, but we have them at a woman's house. Thank you, Jill, on Greenwood, where she has a huge plot that we're doing preparing to do a lot of intensive growing there. And then also we have a garden at ARC. So that's awesome, because that was a real partnership with other, really involving the disabled community more, that we were really excited about. We were excited to meet more people in the community and grow together and be able to share produce together. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. And for people who don't know, ARC is a center that is by and for and in solidarity with people who have developmental disabilities. And for the people who don't know, Down syndrome is one of the conditions that makes you really vulnerable to COVID. It's one of the things, like a bad asthma or bad heart, where it for some reason has a high mortality rate. So we haven't been able to be involved in that community like we were really excited to do, because building community is part of it. It's a huge bit of it. Like, we want to build community together and build community resilience. So, so we're growing a bunch of food, and we are going to do a big seed swap in either at the end of this month or in March. And we urge anybody who has a garden to, grow extra for your neighbors. If you don't know who to give it to in your own neighborhood, bring it to us. We will distribute that food. It will get used. Anything we happen to have extra of during the growing season, we process and we save that. This year we did it in Ziploc bags rather than a lot of canning, because of the great canning jar and lid shortage of 2020, which, that and the toilet paper shortage, like, who expected either? We do a ton of food preservation, and all of that was gone by mid-November, everything we had preserved. So please, if you have the privilege of land and the skills for gardening, just grow extra. And that's one way that we can be in solidarity with each other and care for the earth and care for one another in a way that we survive, because we need to survive this. We need as many of us to make it through as possible, and the only way we do that is in building these communities of care, um, and respect and dignity for each other. So
Hmm.
so that's
Yeah.
something I
I
was.
think and I want to let people who are watching, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the comment box. We
Mhm,
will see those and be able to incorporate those in just a little bit. So ask any questions that you'd like, offer any comments that you'd like in the comment chat box. That'd be great.
mhm,
Um, I think it's pretty extraordinary the community building that you're doing. So being involved with even a credit union, using
yeah,
the parking lot is safe, reliable, dependable space,
yeah,
and that's not always, possible.
mm-mm,
Um, and then with the farmers and
mhm,
having a farm that's big enough to donate to the food bank,
yeah,
to be able to donate to y'all and adding you in their list,
mhm,
that's pretty dang cool.
yeah,
And then working and developing relationships with um, some of the places down there that need the most help, and
mhm,
also organizations that probably also need help and can be community partners like
yeah,
ARC. And so it's not just a, "Hey, we're here riding in on some horses to try and give you some food." It is like, "We are in this
yeah,
together." And
yes,
it can happen that way even if you're not in the Birchwood community.
mhm,
Um, so you're testament to that.
yeah,
So super grateful. What are kinda your hopes for this food desert? And,
mhm,
it's morphed probably into something you wouldn't have imagined, is my guess.
well,
The
in
the
some
pan
way, yeah,
Yeah, I mean, the pandemic has
yes,
created and worsened the problem, and the
mhm,
need is greater. The need has always been great, but it has
mhm,
become greater in our particular crisis.
yeah,
Um, and so y'all have been able to um, increase what you're offering to folks as far as
mhm,
the amount of food and all of that. Is there um, is there a hope of yours and the organizations moving forward?
mhm, yeah, yeah. So quite a few, because as you said, the pandemic has really amplified the inequity, but it's also amplified the amount of community spirit and care for one another. That's something that we see a lot in America, especially in times of crisis. You see people pulling together, and we've seen that after every major disaster. It isn't the only response, of course. We see lots of terrible things too, but that part where that certain amount of people always pull together
Mhm.
to keep things going, and we want to amplify that. We really want people to feel that spirit and continue that spirit of community care and work one shoulder to shoulder with their neighbors, with understanding each other's struggles and understanding better, the nature of what's happening in your own neighborhood. Just
Mhm.
be, I don't know how many people are really familiar with Birchwood, but there's a great divide in Birchwood. If you go down Maplewood, which is the street where Netto's is, where it becomes far more diverse, far more populous, um, linguistically diverse, nation of origin diverse, economically diverse, as you are to the, I always get confused if it's towards the freeway from Maplewood on the Netto side. And
Mhm.
then it is
Kinda
more
Alderwood.
stable.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then it is more stable, people with houses, single family houses on the other side towards Squalicum. So and there are, like, when we initially started this work, there was a lot of fear between the communities of interacting with each other, particularly in the more white middle class side of the neighborhood. There was a lot of mistrust of what was going on. I mean, there's just a lot of, the word is escaping me, but segregation, that's the word I'm saying. It's kind of self-segregated and structurally segregated, you know, in that where the low-income housing was where people who had less means were able to move in. So, you know, like initially when we started, we painted all these old fence posts to look like carrots, and we were like, we'll have them, and people can put them in front of their fruit trees, and people will come and they'll say, welcome neighbor, pick this extra fruit that we will never use, you know. And we were so excited about this project. We thought, oh, this is gonna be great. And it was the first project where we really understood the deep divides in the neighborhood between middle class and upper class folks and lower class people.
What happened?
No one would do it. Like, everyone we talked to who responded was like, well, there's been a lot of thefts in the neighborhood, and I don't want strangers in my property, you know, things like that. And, you know, we were talking about, you know, things that would, you know, fruit trees in your front yard that were right by the street. You know, we weren't talking about going into your backyard and having to unlatch the gate and make sure your dog was inside, you know. So that was a real illustration of that. But what I've seen a lot as the years have progressed is I've seen more interaction between the various communities. And our hope is that a kind of solidarity builds there, and awareness and mutual respect and mutual like a feeling that we're in this together, and that without the care of learning why the divides were there in the first place, without the curiosity to move forward, and without dealing with our individual prejudices that we've dealt with, that our whole community doesn't survive. And that in order to survive, we have to really address these things. And we're seeing, and it starts in knowing your neighbor here, you know, and in working together. In working together, we learn each other's struggles.
Yeah.
And that's my big hope for, you know, the community, that we can build this level of community care and community power, where a neighborhood that is neglected often is able to have the power to say, yes, we want this, or no, we don't want this. You know, we don't want a Trader Joe's to eventually go into this space. We want, you know, we don't want gentrification. Like, that it has the community power to decide what's best for the whole neighborhood, and not just for, you know, the people who have traditionally held power in the neighborhood.
Right.
So that's, you know, that's our big hope, you know, that, and we're hoping to form a worker-owned co-op that can eventually operate a grocery store, where we're also trying to get the city to purchase a spot that would be designated as a food access facility. And however they, you know, there's various ways that could happen, either through a grocer coming in and occupying that space and running it, or through a worker-owned co-op coming in and running an affordable co-op. We don't want to sell, $12 soaps and $6 teas. We want a place where people can get the food that they need to survive. The culturally appropriate, healthy foods that bring everyone their sense of home and their sense of belonging in a community. And so, that's another big hope. Even if it was like a Pike Place market, even that's another option. Inside where many small vendors were represented. That's another possibility. So those are kind of our big community dreams.
Some great dreams. Some great dreams.
Yeah, you have to have the dreams to go forward, right?
Yeah.
Like our Anxiety Roy always says, another world is possible, and we're the ones who had to build it. It doesn't magically appear.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, Tina, thank you.
You're welcome.
I've got waiting in the wings here. So I didn't really introduce myself. Folks may not know me. My name is Sheris Weathers. I'm one of the pastors at Echoes and who's sponsoring this tonight. And our other co-pastor is Emma, and Emma had some questions too. So here's Emma. Hey, Emma.
Hi, Tina. Thank you so much for chatting, and we love your enthusiasm about this topic. It's infectious, so thank you.
Yeah, good.
I was driving through the Birchwood neighborhood last week, and I was surprised. I also kind of got outpriced of Bellingham, especially during this pandemic, and I drove past, just as an example, I drove past a lot that had a tear down shack. A shack. It wasn't a house, a shack. Like you couldn't live in it.
Yeah.
And it cost more than the home I was able to purchase in a different county.
That's not easy.
And it was on the market for, I think, less than a day. And I think that was really like, and that was on the quote unquote, the water side, not the highway side. Right.
Yeah.
And I just like stopped and did a little Reddit search just to kind of, millennial, but like, I was like, just looking again in the neighborhood, and I thought, I was like, I had the thought, I was like, I'm not really sure who can live here. And so and then I drove, wanted to drive past where the Albertsons was and kind of see that. And, and I'll admit I got a little down from that, when I think about just the big change of Bellingham, pricing people out of this city is a big, isn't just impacting me, it's impacting everybody. But having your own experience helps. And so, Tina, I would love to ask you, like, what is your, what's kind of your food for the journey? Like, how are you staying motivated in this work that is, that still is to come? Because if these prices keep rising and the neighborhood keeps changing, we can see it being kind of, oh no, right? But I don't get that sense of, oh no, entirely from you. And I don't believe that about what you're saying. Exactly. I believe what you're saying, that people care and love and want to look out for each other. But how are you staying kind of, like we come from a spiritual tradition, right? So we're like, what food do you take on the journey? And then I will ask a very particular food related question. And what food are you most excited when it comes into the program, like on those Saturday mornings? When I worked at a food bank, I will say like eggs was egg day. So I would just love to hear about your personal kind of nourishment on how you do this activist work, and then what kind of physical food do you like?
Okay. All right. So I don't have a particular spiritual tradition that I ascribe to, though I really respect, when people have that and that drives them to move forward and be part of the world in a caring and exciting way. But for me, what I really do is I look to others who are doing work. One of the things that I really I have it on my Facebook page, and I haven't been able to change it because I need it. I need to see it every day. Is Miriam Kaba, who's a prison abolitionist. She was out of Chicago, but I think she's in New York now. Has a saying where she said, "Hope is a discipline. You have to practice it every day." And in that way, like I always look for those moments where. Sorry, I had to turn off my alarm. I look for the moments where people are having success. You know, you can always find the horror of the world, and that's there, and it needs to be faced. But you also have to look at ways people are responding, and and how people are surviving, and how people are finding care. For me, being a disabled woman, the disability community is very much based in the community care and we always say crypt magic, the amount of adaptability and connection, because we're used to the isolation, in general, like with the pandemic, we're like, oh, okay, everyone has to kind of do our thing for a while, and we, so I find, like I said, in community and in seeing what other people are doing, and in there's extraordinary ways that people respond to horrible things, where people have found hope, where people have been incredibly creative and innovative, where people have made beauty, like art and nature, being outside in the trees, that always is a regenerative thing, in the ocean, and then making art or seeing art, anything where the human spirit is just like, damn, we did that, like that's amazing.
Yeah. Amen.
When you see those moments, or the moments where you see truth in any moment where you see truth, that feeling where your soul just goes, oh my God, like anytime you can find those feelings, like those are what carry me through and push me forward. And we have a great activist community in Bellingham too, and in Whatcom County, like community to community development. I've learned so much from Rosalinda and the other organizers there, and other activists that are in town have really taught me a lot. Michelle Vendiola and Michael Vendiola with Redline Salish Seed. Like if you always are in a state of learning and knowing that you have more to learn, you can keep that sense of hope alive in a better way, I think. Even in the hardest, darkest times, like knowing that there's more to see and to know, for me is a great comfort.
Thank you.
And then as far as foods that we love to see at the share spot, we love it when we get proteins, like and like garlic. It's the funniest thing.
Okay.
Garlic is, in so many cultures. So if we get a ton of garlic, that goes really fast. Like anything, onions go really fast, meat goes fast, tofu goes fast, applesauce goes fast. One thing that a lot of people don't know about is that if you are on Medicaid or Medicare, you don't get dental benefits. You can get emergency surgery, or you can have a tooth pulled out and you can have a cleaning, but that's it. You can't get your teeth fixed. You get it out or nothing. So there are a lot of people who have trouble eating things that require a lot of teeth. So when we get soups, that's always helpful. When people make, if you make like a lasagna or mashed potatoes and bring that in, you can freeze it in a Ziploc or those foil trays that have the foil lids, you know, you can always cook something, freeze it in that, bring it down to us. Make sure you write the ingredients on it and things like that. Like people love those things, but like anything that you can think of, you're like, oh yeah, so many cultures use that. Like garlic is one of those, like, you know, onions and things like that. So
awesome.
I don't know. That's some of the stuff. And fruit. We can always use fruit, especially in berry season. Oh, berries just fly out of there. Yeah.
That's excellent. Thank you. And people, I assume people can just drive around the Birchwood neighborhood and find out where the food boxes are.
Yes, you can do that. Or if you visit our Facebook page, we have it in the About section of our Facebook page. We have all the boxes listed, and there's a little Google map there. I messed up and didn't make the payment in time on our actual website, so we lost our website, but we will have a website again. One that is less tricky to manage. Yeah, they're all listed there, and does Echoes have a Facebook page?
We do, yes.
You do? Okay, I can post the Google map of that on that.
That'd be great.
As well.
Yeah, I'll just throw it up here so we can see. Everybody can take a look. Yeah. So there's the Facebook page. Yeah, Albertson, seriously. And then in the About section is going to be where you can find those maps, and also information on you know, when the food distributions are happening and specific needs and stuff like that. I've kind of looked through it a little bit and been like, yeah, there's good stuff on there for if anybody wanted to be able to be in solidarity with y'all and with
love that.
Yeah. Cool.
We have a link on our website. We can link it again to the petition that you have.
Great.
That people can sign a petition even during these COVID times to, you know, take a stand against these corporations. I feel like for a lot of people, right, it's just like getting that information out, like just even realizing that these clocks exist, that these things are happening. So we want to make sure that people can sign up. Petitions do make a difference. In addition to the on-the-ground activism, there's so many ways to do that activist work. So thank you for providing many ways for people to get involved.
Yeah, you bet.
Yeah, and there was one question we had in the chat, which was, has the Food Desert Fighters, have you all contacted local and regional politicians about possibly help? I'm going to guess yes.
Well, we had been working really hard on city council in the years before, and it took us years to get that non-compete clause. And then this year was supposed to be the state level non-compete. That was supposed to be a huge focus of ours, but it just, with the COVID, it just had to be pushed to the back because the immediate food need was so high, and there were just so many. We only had so many volunteers, right, and so many people who were able to be out and do work. So we're hoping that this year, in addition to gardening and providing immediate food access, that we're able to put together a good bill that we would like to have. You know, Alex Ramelow, Alicia Rule, and Deb Schumacher, and who's the other one? Not Doug Erickson, because Doug, right? But getting other people on board with that and really pushing to have that in place. But it is in the works. Like I said, it just got pushed aside this year because nobody expected this pandemic to be like this, and nobody expected to have an administration that didn't respond to it. And so communities really had to step up on their own and try to meet needs. So, yeah.
Wow. Oh my gosh, Tina, thank you so much for being with us tonight and in our kind of non-scary way of just offering some prayer. We do just pray for y'all and your important work there in Birchwood, and your important work actually that can affect the entire city if legislation can be changed for this completely unfair practice that is completely corporate interest. So we are grateful for the community that you're building. And we just want to offer a blessing to you in your work, and also just for you with COVID has hit you personally, and at least your family, and we just want to pray for you in this particularly difficult time too. And so your generosity just overflows, and so we're thankful in many ways, many ways. It's been a gift tonight. Next week, thank you. Next week at Echoes, we are going to be having our service church. So we're going to be writing, the focus is letters to elders. So we're going to be writing to some folks who need some encouragement. And if anyone listening out there would like some folks just to be able to send a letter to an elder that they know that could use who could use some encouragement, just let us know. That's our hope, to spend an evening. We'll be doing that together as we're online. So we'll be on Zoom doing that. And you can join in Echoes at anytime for whatever capacity. We're a pretty fluid, welcoming bunch. But blessings to everyone out there, and thank you for your ongoing work, Tina, and for all who are like Tina and advocating for the rights of those who have been oppressed and those who've been pushed down, for those who don't have voices. So may this world continue to be changed and more equitable. So, amen. Okay. Good night, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.